The night my mother told me to leave, it was raining. Not the dramatic kind of rain you see in movies. Loud thunder, flashing lightning. Just a quiet, steady rain. The kind that soaks through your jacket before you even realize it has started. I was 19 years old. I had one bag. A gray duffel bag that had my name written on the inside tag in black marker because I had taken it to summer camp 6 years earlier and my mom had written my name so I would not lose it. Funny the things you remember. She had written my name in that bag to make sure I would not be lost. And then 12 years later she was the one who made sure I was. I stood on the front step and I waited. I do not know what I was waiting for. Some part of me, the 19-year-old part, the part that had lived in that house her whole life, was waiting for her to open the door again. To say she had made a mistake. To say come back inside. The door did not open. I heard the television go on. And I picked up my bag and I walked away. 12 years later I drove back down that same street. Different car. Different clothes. Different life. And she was the one waiting at the door. Except this time, I was the one who did not open it. To understand what happened that rainy night, you have to understand the house I grew up in. And the woman who ran it. My mother's name is Patricia. Everyone called her Pat. She was not a cruel woman in the way that word usually means. She did not shout constantly. She did not throw things. She was not violent. What she was cold. And selective. And she had decided very early, I think before I was even old enough to understand, that of her 2 daughters only one of us was going to get the full version of her love. And that daughter was not me. My sister Dana is 3 years younger than me. From the moment she was born, the whole house rearranged itself around her. I remember being 6 years old and standing in the kitchen doorway watching my mom rock Dana to sleep, singing softly. I stood there for a long time. My mom never looked up. I went back to my room and sat on my bed and felt something I could not name at 6 years old but understood much better later. It was the feeling of being on the outside of a window, looking in at a warmth that was not meant for you. As we grew up, the difference became more visible. Dana got new clothes when the school year started. I got Dana's clothes from the year before. Dana had birthday parties with her friends. Balloons, a cake my mom baked herself. My birthdays were acknowledged with a card and whatever was left in my mom's purse that week. Dana got to stay up late on weekends. I had a strict bedtime until I was 15. Small things, some people might say. But small things repeated every single day of your childhood stop being small. They become the ground you walk on. They become the story you tell yourself about who you are and how much you are worth. I told myself for a long time that I was imagining it, that I was being too sensitive. My mom never said outright that she loved Dana more. She never sat me down and explained the hierarchy. But I felt it in every room of that house. In the way her face changed when Dana walked in. In the way she listened when Dana spoke and half listened when I did. In the way she kept Dana's school photos in frames on the mantelpiece and kept mine in a drawer. By the time I was a teenager I had stopped trying to compete. I just moved quietly through that house. I did my homework. I helped with dinner without being asked. I stayed out of the way. I think part of me believed that if I was useful enough, invisible enough, good enough, eventually she would see me. She would look up from Dana and notice that her other daughter was right there. Right there the whole time. She never did. When I turned 17 I got my first job. A coffee shop near my school, 3 afternoons a week and all day Saturday. I loved it. Not just because of the money, though the money mattered. I loved it because for those hours I was just a person doing a job. Nobody's less favored daughter. Nobody's afterthought. Just someone who made coffee and learned the orders of the regulars and got better at something every single week. My manager at the coffee shop was a woman named Gloria. She was in her 50s, sharp eyes, very direct, not warm in an obvious way but fair in a way that meant more to me than warmth at that point. She told me once, after I had been there about 6 months, that I was the most reliable young person she had ever employed. I went home that evening and sat with that sentence for a long time. The most reliable. Someone had noticed. Someone had said something good about me out loud. I cannot fully explain what that did for me except to say that I held on to those words for years. I gave my mom a portion of my salary every month from the day I started working. He never asked me to. I just did it because it felt like the right thing and also because some part of me still believed that being useful would translate into being valued. It never did. She took the money without comment and spent it, as far as I could tell, mostly on things for Dana. A new jacket. A school trip. Driving lessons. I did not begrudge Dana those things. I just noticed. By the time I was 18, I had saved enough to open a small bank account of my own. A savings account that I did not tell my mom about. I kept the card at the back of my school binder. I added to it every month whatever I could manage after giving my mom her portion. It was not much. But it was mine. The first thing in my life that was entirely, completely mine. The summer I turned 19, everything changed. I had been working full-time at the coffee shop since finishing school. I was saving aggressively. I had plans. I wanted to study business. I had been looking into part-time courses. I had a rough timeline in my head for how I was going to build something for myself. I felt for the first time in my life like I was moving. Like I had direction. Like the ground under my feet was finally solid. One evening in July I came home from a double shift, tired and hungry. I pushed open the front door and immediately felt that something was different. The house was quiet in an unusual way. And then I saw it. The door to my bedroom was open. And Dana was inside. She was sitting on my bed surrounded by my things. My clothes were in a pile on the floor. My books had been moved off my shelf. My desk had been cleared. Dana looked up when I came in and she had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable, but only slightly. She said, "Oh, you're home." I said, "What is happening in here?" He said, "Mom said I could have this room. It's bigger. I need more space for my stuff." I stood very still. I said, "This is my room." He shrugged. She shrugged. He said, "You should talk to Mom." I found my mom in the kitchen making tea. Calm. Unhurried. Like nothing significant was happening. I said, "Mom, why is Dana in my room?" She said, without turning around, "Dana needs more space. He has more things now." I said, "Where am I supposed to sleep?" He said, "You are 19. You are old enough to make your own arrangements." I stood there. I said, "Make my own arrangements? What does that mean?" He turned around then. And she looked at me with an expression I had never quite seen on her face before. Not angry. Not guilty. He's resolved. Like a decision had been made a long time ago and she was only now delivering the news. She said, "It means you are old enough to be on your own. This house is small. Dana needs the space. You have a job. You have savings. You will be fine." I said, "You are asking me to leave my own home." He said, "I am telling you that it is time. That is different." I looked at her for a long moment. I waited for something else. Some softness. Some acknowledgement of what she was doing. It did not come. She turned back to her tea. I went to my room, or what had been my room, and I found my gray duffel bag at the back of the wardrobe. Dana watched me pack from the doorway. She did not speak. I took my clothes, my documents, my books, my savings card. I left everything else. I carried the bag to the front door. My mom was on the sofa by then. The television was on. I stood in the living room doorway and I said, "Mom." She looked up. I said, "I just want you to know that I will never forget this." She looked back at the television. He said, "You will be fine." I walked out. The door locked behind me. It was raining. I sat at the bus stop at the end of the road for 40 minutes waiting for a bus that would take me to my coworker's flat on the other side of town. I did not cry at the bus stop. I had learned a long time ago that crying in that house was pointless, and I suppose the lesson had stayed with me. I just sat there in the rain and I thought, this is where it starts. The real part. The part that is entirely mine. I was 19 years old. I had one bag, a savings account with £800 in it, a job at a coffee shop, and a coworker named Simone who had once said, if you ever need a place to crash, my sofa is yours. I was about to find out if she meant it. She meant it. Simone's sofa was uncomfortable in the way that sofas always are when they are not yours. It was too short for me to lie flat, and it had a spring that pressed into my lower back if I turned a certain way. I slept on it for 4 months. I will always be grateful for those 4 months. Simone was a year older than me, practical and no-nonsense, and she had her own difficult history with her family, so she did not ask too many questions about mine. She charged me a small amount toward the bills, which I paid without hesitation, and otherwise left me to get on with things. We developed a quiet rhythm. She worked early shifts, I worked late ones. We crossed paths in the kitchen sometimes, made each other tea, occasionally watched television together in the evenings. It was not a warm or emotional arrangement, but it was solid, and I needed solid more than I needed warm right then. I picked up extra shifts at the coffee shop. I was working 6 days a week by August. Gloria gave me a small raise in September, and I almost cried in the back office, which surprised us both. She handed me a tissue without comment and told me to take 5 minutes. She was a good woman, Gloria. In October I enrolled in a part-time business course at the local college. 2 evenings a week. It meant I was exhausted most of the time. Working days, studying evenings, sleeping on a short sofa with a bad spring. But I felt alive in a way I never had in my mother's house. I felt like every difficult thing I was doing was building something. Every extra shift, every late night with a textbook, every pound I added to my savings account. It was all going somewhere. Somewhere I was choosing. I did not contact my mother. She did not contact me. The silence between us was total and, on my side at least, deliberate. I had said what I needed to say at that front door. There was nothing to add. Dana sent me a text in December. Said, hope you are okay. I replied, I am fine, thanks. That was the extent of it. I did not have the emotional energy for more. By the following spring I had enough saved for a deposit on a room in a shared house. For housemates, a small room with a window that faced a brick wall, a shared bathroom that was never quite clean enough. It was mine. My name on the tenancy agreement. My key on my keyring. I stood in that small room on the first night and I felt something shift in my chest. Something settling. The years that followed were not dramatic. There was no single turning point, no one moment where everything changed. It was just work. Consistent, persistent, unglamorous work. I finished my business course. I got a job at a small firm that handled accounts for local businesses. I was not brilliant at it immediately, but I was reliable and I learned fast and I stayed late when it mattered. It got better. I got promoted. I moved to a slightly bigger room in a slightly better house. I dated a little, not seriously. I made friends slowly. I had always been cautious with people, not unfriendly but careful, and that did not change. But the people I let in were good ones. People who showed up when they said they would. People who did not make me feel like an afterthought. I had learned, living in my mother's house, exactly what it felt like to be an afterthought. And I had developed, without fully realizing it, a precise and reliable ability to recognize it in others. I called Gloria once, a couple of years after leaving the coffee shop, just to say thank you. She remembered me immediately. She said, I always knew you would do well. I said, you told me I was reliable. He said, you were. You still are, I imagine. I said, I try to be. She said, that is more than most people manage. Keep going. I kept going. By the time I was 26, I had been promoted to a senior position at the accounts firm. I was managing a small team. I was earning more than I had ever imagined earning at 19 on Simone's sofa. I had moved into my own flat. Just me, no housemates, a proper lease, furniture I had chosen myself. The first night I slept there I lay in the dark for a long time just listening to the quiet. I had not spoken to my mother in 7 years. People sometimes ask me if that felt strange. If I missed her. I always find the question difficult to answer honestly without sounding either cold or self-pitying, neither of which I want to be. The truth is, I missed the idea of her. I missed the mother I had spent my childhood wishing she would be. The one who would look up from what she was doing and really see me. I missed that mother. The one who actually existed. The one who handed me a bag and told me to make my own arrangements. I had processed her a long time ago. I did not miss her in the way you miss someone whose absence leaves a hole. I missed her in the way you eventually stop missing a thing you never actually had. My career continued to move. At 28 I left the accounts firm and joined a larger company, a consultancy that worked with mid-sized businesses going through growth or restructuring. The work was more complex and more interesting and the hours were longer, but I did not mind the hours. I had always worked better when I was busy. Idle time had never been comfortable for me. Too much space for thoughts I preferred to keep moving past. I was good at the new job. Better than good. I had a way with clients that my colleagues sometimes mentioned. A steadiness, they called it. An ability to stay calm when things got complicated and to explain difficult situations in plain language without making people feel stupid. I think growing up in an environment where you had to read the room constantly, where you had to anticipate moods and navigate silences and figure out what was really being said underneath what was actually being said, I think that environment, as damaging as it was in some ways, had also built in me a particular kind of intelligence about people. I could read a room. I knew when something was wrong before it was said out loud. I knew how to hold a conversation steady when it wanted to tip. At 30 I was made a partner. A junior partner, but a partner. My name on the company website. My name on the door. I stood outside that office on the first morning and I looked at my name on that small metal plaque and I thought about my mother. Not with anger. Not with the urge to call her and say, look. Just with a quiet, private sense of completion. Like a sentence that had finally found its full stop. And then at 32 I bought the house. I had been looking for almost a year. I knew what I wanted, not enormous, not showy, but solid. A proper house, not a flat. A garden if possible. A kitchen with a good window. I viewed 14 properties. Most of them were fine. None of them felt right. And then I walked into the one with the red front door and the oak tree in the garden and the kitchen window that faced east for the morning light. And I stood in the empty living room and I knew. The process took 3 months. Surveys and solicitors and paperwork and more paperwork. I did not tell anyone in my family, not that I was in contact with any of them, but I was aware that Dana and I had exchanged a handful of texts over the years and I made a deliberate choice not to mention it. This was mine. I did not want anyone else's energy near it until it was fully, legally, completely mine. The day I got the keys I drove there alone. I parked outside and sat in the car for a moment looking at the red door. Then I went inside and walked through every room slowly. The living room with the afternoon light. The 3 bedrooms quiet and empty. The bathroom with the old tiles I was already planning to replace. The kitchen with that east-facing window. The garden beyond it with the oak tree standing steady in the October afternoon. I sat on the kitchen floor because there was no furniture yet and I ate a sandwich I had brought with me and I looked out at that oak tree and I thought about the bus stop in the rain. I thought about Simone's sofa. I thought about the room with the brick wall view. I thought about every year between that night and this afternoon and I felt something I can only describe as full. Not happy in a jumping up and down way. Just full. Settled. Complete. A few weeks later, once I had moved the first pieces of furniture in and the place had begun to feel lived in, I took a photo. Just the front of the house. The red door. My car in the drive. I looked at it for a long time. And then I sent it to my mother. No message. Just the photo. I am still not entirely sure why. I think I had been carrying something for a long time and I needed to set it down somewhere. That photo was me setting it down. Her reply came in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. After 12 years of silence. After not one birthday message, not one phone call, not one text asking if I was alive or well or struggling or thriving. 4 minutes. She said, "Oh, this is lovely. Is this a hotel you are staying at?" I read it twice. A hotel. 12 years, and she looked at a photo of my house and her first thought was that I was on holiday. I wrote back, "It is mine." 2 words. Her reply was faster this time. She said, "Yours? How?" I sat with that question. How? Not, "Congratulations." Not, "I am so proud of you." Not even, "Wow." How? As if the idea of me owning something like this required an explanation. As if it did not quite compute. I wrote, "I worked for it." A longer pause. 2 minutes, maybe 3. Then what is the address? I want to come and see it. I put the phone down on my kitchen table. My kitchen table. In my house. I picked it up again. I read the message again. What is the address? I thought about a lot of things in that moment. I thought about Dana sitting on my bed surrounded by my things. I thought about a bag with my name written inside it in black marker. I thought about a television being switched on. I thought about the sound of a lock. I thought about what it would mean to send that address. To open that red door. To let her stand in my kitchen, in my space, in the life I had built entirely without her, and watch her look around at it all and say, "Oh, this is lovely." And I put the phone face down on the table. And I made a cup of tea. And I watched the morning come through my kitchen window. And I did not reply. Not that day. Not the week after. Not ever. Dana called me 3 weeks later. He said, "Mom is really hoping to hear from you." He said, "The house looks beautiful." I said, "I am glad she thinks so." Dana was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "She is getting older, you know. Things are different now." "That I know." Dana said, "Don't you think it might be time to let things go?" I said, "I have let things go, Dana. A long time ago. That is not the same as opening a door." Dana did not have an answer for that. We talked for a few more minutes about other things and then said goodbye. He was kind. She had always been kinder than she probably knew how to show back then, when we were young and she was the favorite and I was the other one. I did not blame her for that. She had been a child. We both had been. I never blamed Dana. But I also never sent my mother the address. People ask me sometimes whether I regret it. Whether I wish I had handled things differently. Whether I think about what might have happened if I had sent the address, if I had opened the door, if I had let her in. I think about it. Of course I do. I am not made of stone and she is my mother, and those two facts sit together in a complicated way that I have spent years learning to carry without it crushing me. There is a version of this story where I send the address. Where she comes to the house. Where we sit in my kitchen and she sees what I have built and something shifts between us. Maybe she says sorry. Maybe she does not say sorry, but her eyes say something that is close to it. Maybe we find, in our 50s and 70s, a version of each other we could not find when I was 9 years old with painted planets. I think about that version sometimes. I think it is possible that it could have been real. But I also know myself. And I know that I would have sat across from her in my kitchen and I would have been waiting, the way I had always waited, for her to really see me. And if she had not, if she had looked around at everything and made it somehow about Dana or about herself or about anything other than the fact that her daughter had survived and built something and was standing right in front of her, it would have cost me something I was no longer willing to pay. I had spent 19 years in that house waiting to be seen. I had spent 12 more years building a life that did not require her to see me. I was not prepared to go back to waiting. So I did not. My mother is in her late 60s now. She lives with Dana, I believe. I hear this through distant channels. A cousin who is still in contact with both sides of things. Occasional updates that reach me without my seeking them. She's well as far as I know. Dana takes good care of her. I am glad of that genuinely. I do not wish her difficulty. I do not carry anger anymore. I worked through the anger a long time ago in therapy, in long walks, in quiet rooms, in the particular and necessary grief of accepting that the parent you needed and the parent you had were not the same person. I carry something quieter now. Something that is close to peace, I think, though it has a particular texture that peace in easier circumstances does not have. It is a peace that was paid for, earned, like most things in my life. The oak tree in my garden has grown since I moved in. I did not think it would grow so much so fast. Surprised me. Sometimes I sit in the garden in the evenings and I look at it and I think, things grow in the right conditions. You cannot grow in conditions that are wrong for you. You can only find different soil. I found mine. If you are listening to this and something in it sounds familiar, if you know what it is to grow up in a house where the love was rationed, where you were always slightly less than someone else, where you learned to move quietly and ask for little and hope without expecting, I want you to know something. You are not what they decided you were. You are not the afterthought, the difficult one, the one who was told to figure it out. Those were their limitations, not your definition. And it is never too late to find different soil. Whatever bag you are carrying right now, whatever door closed behind you, there is a red door somewhere ahead, with your name on it, and an oak tree in the garden. Keep walking. If this story stayed with you, leave me a comment and tell me why. And subscribe, because every story on this channel is about someone who was underestimated. And every single one of them ends the same way, with the underdog winning. See you in the next one.